Our panel wanted to really focus on the solutions. I think all of us are consulting in the field, and we all get those harried, panicked calls because people don't want to admit it's happening because then it puts you and your system on notice. And then is the panic and the threat to your livelihood or the perception of such when it happens. I also recognize that in America, we're just starting to pass laws about workplace bullying, and some of those are pretty weak as it is. The only law that I've seen that's really good here in the US is the one that Puerto Rico passed in August of 2020. So, in the meantime, what can we do? First, I do need to thank Morgan and the RCMI organization. I've invited them to this conference, and they've been very supportive of my work looking at the ties between workplace bullying and health disparities. But we also need to just to recap the problems, and I think we all know them now: sabotaging your lab work, the coercion to false conclusions, the health harming stress, the cost of the extended bullying and to the school, and the lying and the manipulation. And we also know that bullying is typically built on a power differential. Now, while we are so used to organizational power, there are other powers. There's personal power. So it could be an administrative assistant who's been there for 10 years, and her kid and the vice president's kid play soccer together. And so she has personal power. It could be reverent power because the person has been in the environment so long, they are revered and respected. And so they have that kind of clout to bully. We've talked about the official powers or organizational power. And there are also things where with the personal, the reverent, I think I got them all, personal, reverent, organizational powers. And if there's a power differential in any of those areas, you could certainly find someone could find themselves at the end. But for the last couple of years, I've been telling folks, targets, and I've been bullied too. There is two magical powers, let me call them, is collective power and knowledge as power. Both of these are very important in trying to regain your footing with a bully and also within an organization that is not committed to making change. So we've seen collective power strategies. We've seen them in civil rights movements, the women's rights movement. I mean, look at what's happened with the Me Too movement and what it took a long time, but a number of people came forward. Even the support we have for dreamers and for the environmental concerns, there's a critical mass of people coming forward. So in some areas where I've worked, if a group of people come forward and say, we're not going to put up with this, we're not going to deal with this problem. So an example that I'm familiar with is a new dean was brought in to a professional school after a longstanding dean who was beloved for 20 years. But this new dean was quite an ogre and a tyrant. And the faculty knew the difference between good leadership and whatever had been brought to them. So a number of the faculty got together, they made their plan, they knew the rules. So there's your collective power, number of faculty, they knew the rules, the knowledge is power, and they went to the board of trustees and they had that dean removed. It was the collective voice that made a difference. When we stand individually in silos, it's kind of like being those little ducks on a wheel in the carnival. It's very easy to be picked off if you're out there by yourself. So certainly try to find allies or support or people to come forward to support what it is that you're saying. And also the power. Knowledge is power. Know the policies. Now, granted, maybe your policy does not include workplace bullying in it specifically, but most colleges and universities have some kind of policy about collaborative work, teamwork, inclusion, innovative environment, something like that. Read through those policies, know what you're dealing with. Also, read through your state and your local policies, because a number of times I have found out that those who have the diminished power in an organization are women and people of color. So when women and people of color are residing in those other positions, such as adjuncts, lecturers without tenure, at-will positions, these are all positions that do not have the same protections. And so if you know the policies, join your union if you have one, that's that collective power. And that way you can know what it is that you're dealing with. Do your homework and see what has the institution done with past complaints of bullying. And you can tell if, and I've worked with schools where they say, nothing has happened, but I've worked with other schools or say, yeah, I was encouraged to go talk to Dr. So-and-so and we worked it out, or something in between. And last but not least, what I would suggest is, if possible, and I think it's harder as we all get older, what are your career options? Can you move? There's no shame in leaving a bad and hostile situation. There's no shame in saying, you know what, this is not worth my health. I'm going to leave. Don't see it as giving up. See it as creating a better path for your future. So I totally agree. We said this on the first day, that many of the things that we say is that the solutions seem to be target facing. Like it's on the person who's been abused to come up with the solutions. However, some of the solutions offered were tied to collective and knowledge-based action. Some of the things that we've seen are collectively, unions, AAUP, and AFT can certainly help out if you have access to those. There's a big voice from NIH and NSF to stop those behaviors. That's new in the last 5 years. And quite frankly, with a number of things going on in our society, paying more attention to BIPOC individuals, that means, well, if BIPOC folks are bullied, you can certainly find ways to tie that to, at least in the United States, it's called the Title VII legislation, and tie bullying to discrimination. Depending on where you are at in the globe, there should be some federal guidelines that prohibit abuse based on some protected class status. So in conclusion, I'm saying we can find power in the collective. There certainly is strength in the numbers. The reason why I bring this forward is I just completed a study of 35 women educators. They were all retired. And because they were women, and many of them were women of color, they were working from a marginalized position for the better part of their careers. So this historical narrative came back with a salient theme. 75% of these women said collective power. One woman in particular, who is about to retire from her presidency, said, research what you're going into. Know the numbers, if at all possible, as well as the people that you're working with. Be prepared to speak up, and also gather your collective voices and allies along the way. We all need them. We know at times it can feel hopeless. On this panel, as I had said before, we've all received those calls. In fact, I received 2 yesterday, and it was really sad what they're saying. But again, I must say the collective voice and the knowledge can certainly bring you power. So in close, I certainly encourage you, if you did not register through the Parity Movement organization, here is the website. Some of you were invited via email and registered via email. Some of you registered through the website. So it is the Parity Movement, that academic Parity Movement, that is, of course, coordinating this. And there's our website. And I would just like to say thank you for attending, because that means there are that many more people out there who are going to work against this horrible abuse and help us move on to, as somebody said, the joy of our careers. Because I really do love what I do. I just really hate that there's bullying involved with it. So those are my 2 cents for the closing remarks, and I'll pass it back to you.